when I finish a book and I can't pick up another book for a couple of days because I have to sit with it for a little bit, that's when I know it's great.
Oh, wow, Courtney. I think I did know that about you, though. I think
Yeah.
we've had these discussions.
Yeah, I have to sit for a little bit because I can't start something new because I have to process it.
I thought the power of public education is right there. And I always wanted to be a teacher who believed in people and believed in their writing, or, so
I love it.
Well, as a teacher of high school students, and they would come in and say, oh, that made me cry when we were reading Patrick Smith,
A Land Remembered.
A Land Remembered. They would say, oh, that made me cry. And I said, that's good. Because if the author wrote so well to make you feel something that would inspire you, make you laugh, make you cry, like that's a well-written book. So...
Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. Thank you so much for watching Call Me Beast. If you ever see me out in the wild, I hope you will call me Beast. We are talking books tonight. I'm so excited. I love books. I love reading. I love people that like books. I like talking about books, and that's what we're doing. Dr. Mary White is here. How are you, Mary?
I'm doing great, and this is no April Fool's joke at all, because we are totally getting away from the marching and pageantry arts for 1 minute to talk about some of our favorite things. With some of my favorite things. I have two of my former co-workers here who I love dearly, who we've always talked, wrote, spoke, everything about books, and I love them. So
Courtney Beard, say hello.
Hi, I am Courtney Beard, and I am with two of my very favorite people. And now, Tim, I'm going to add you into my list of favorite people.
Oh, wow.
I had the pleasure of working with Mary at a school site and at a district level position. And Shannon and I have worked together for almost 20 some odd years. We won't say how many of those 20 years, but we have always talked books. We love books. And I'm so excited to be here tonight and to share the books that we are currently reading and books that we have read in the past.
I love it. So Shannon Blunt, say hello. How are you?
Hi, good evening, Tim. Nice to meet you. I am here with two of my literacy leaders that I've worked with in the district, but also that I am proud to call my friends. And I'm excited to talk books. That's my gig at the school district that I work in.
Wow. So your job revolves around book stuff? How cool is that? You're very lucky.
I'm very lucky, yes. I have loved literacy for a very long time. I was an English teacher. I taught high school English, and then I was what they called a reading coach, and then became a literacy coach with this woman right here. And my job revolves around it now at the district level. So thanks for having me.
I love it. So, Mary, I'm so glad that you corralled two of your best friends who are book people to have this conversation. It's going to be really fun. If you're watching live, everybody, you're awesome. Thanks for being here. Put in the comments section where you're watching from and what your favorite book is. So, Mary, I'm going to make you go first. I mean, I found this really hard to choose a book. So I have a bunch of them written down, but I do have one I'm going to say because I felt like I had to have one, right? So, Mary, where would you start?
I feel like I know who your author was. How about that? Do I know or do I not know?
I don't know. We're not going to do me first. We're going to come back to me later. And yes, you know who my author is. I do have an author that I especially love. Yes.
Okay. So one of my very favorite books, because I, like you, had a really hard time talking and choosing and things like that. And I'm going to tell you why. One of my very favorite books is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I think you've read this, Tim, and let me tell you why, that I have read this at very seminal times in my life. One was right before I was graduating high school, and I was a mess, a train wreck, and it helped me get through. One of the reasons that I like it, it has that theme of education is going to get you somewhere, and working hard is going to get you somewhere. And I think we've talked about this a million times, Tim. Like, my whole family is about that. Working hard is going to get you somewhere. And the book is just beautifully written. If you have not read it, it's an oldie but a goodie. It takes place in the 1920s, and it's just about, like an Irish girl growing up in poverty in Brooklyn. and I think you'll love it. I don't know if you guys read it?
Yes, I have.
Oh, I just love it. And it's so well written, and it's all about the American dream and working hard, and that's why I love it. And some gender issues discussed, like the power, if you don't mind me saying, the power of sex over women. And it's used a lot in the theme, like that men have a lot of power over sex over women. I think that theme is still tried and true. So that's my favorite book, Tim. I had it right out there for you.
And I knew that that's what you were going to say. So Shannon, tell me why you like this book?
Say what?
Why I like that same book?
Yeah. Tell me why you like it.
I mean, it's not on my favorite list. Like, I happen to have read it, but it's not on
Well, okay, so do either of you, Courtney or Shannon, either of you have any comments about this book? Because I do think this is a very special book.
Shannon didn't like it.
Honestly, okay. This is I took notes tonight, Tim, because I have a hard time remembering all of the books that I read.
Right.
There are people who can recite names, titles, authors off the tip of their tongue. I am not one of those people. I read it, and unless it really stuck with me, Courtney can tell you, I'm always looking for not just good books. I want great books. And really, the great books are what I remember. And so I'm sorry, I cannot comment on the street.
She calls that,
Brooklyn.
Tim, she calls that the good to great rating.
Yeah.
I like it.
There's so many good books, but what does it take to go from a good book to a great book?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, so how does a book go from good to great? Let's talk about that.
My perspective on a good to great. Okay. So I guess I was reflecting on this, and I do think that the books that are on my great list do revolve around like a story within a story for myself, that there is some other story attached to them.
Right.
Like you attach that to a time in your life.
Yes.
And I attach these to different events that may have happened that corresponded to the time I read them. Or in one case of one of the books, I met the author. And when I heard him speak about his book, it made it even more impactful when I read it. So it's kind of like that extra layer that really has moved some of my books from good to great. Also, when friends recommend a book, I ask them now, like, is this one that I would think is great?
We have to rate
Because
them.
otherwise I'm not going to waste my time. I mean, I may, but I prefer to read just the great books.
Okay, how about you, Courtney? What do you think about the good to great?
So for me, it depends on where I am in my life.
Yeah.
And so there are certain, like my kind of pinnacle book that I think has shaped me as a reader, as an adult, is The Diary of Anne Frank.
Oh my gosh, Courtney.
And
Okay, that's a
so
great one.
it is great. And so historical fiction is where I go.
Me too.
I will default but I will stay with historical fiction. But I also know to be a well-rounded reader, I need to stray a little bit. And so here is, if anybody's listening and they just I don't need to think about a book. I can start it Sunday morning and finish it Sunday afternoon. It is Frida McFadden. Thriller, kind of mystery, you never know what's going to happen, but those are when I'm really a little stressed in my life and I need an escape. But historical fiction is just my fave. And the one that I just read recently is The Things I Cannot Say.
Oh,
And-
wasn't that good, Courtney?
Oh, and it toggles back and forth between present time to the past, and the family is dealing with autism and family issues between the husband and the wife, and then it goes back to the historical, and it's just impactful. It hit me hard, and when I finish a book and I can't pick up another book for a couple of days because I have to sit with it for a little bit, that's when I know it's great.
Oh, wow, Courtney. I think I did know that about you, though. I think
Yeah.
we've had these discussions.
Yeah, I have to sit for a little bit because I can't start something new because I have to process it.
I've got one more criteria that makes a book.
Oh, she remembered now.
No, I'm just gonna say one more criteria for me is it cannot be predictable. I love when an author has totally fooled me in what the ending is going to be. That's why I can't watch the Hallmark Channel. Those movies all have predictable endings, predictable plot lines. I can't stand it. So those great books also have like, oh, they've thrown me for a little bit of a loop that I didn't see was coming.
What was a book recently like that? I can't.
For me,
Yeah.
well, on my great list here, I have a book that I wanted to talk about. Hold on, let me go on my notes.
It's her list is like 10 pages long.
No. Okay, here was one that time that I
Right.
read it, COVID, lockdown. I read the book, Anxious People
Oh,
by
yeah.
Frederick Bachman.
Bachman.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've read other books of his, but this one especially it was not predictable. It made me laugh. I enjoyed every minute of it. But also just that time, you know, like we were all anxious people
Yes.
at the time, and that the plot took some different twists and turns that I didn't see were coming. And if you recall, it was about like a bank robbery gone wrong,
Yeah.
and the people that were trapped together, the hostages, if you will, and how they got to know each other. And I love that book.
Now Frederick Bachman wrote The Man from Ove too,
Yes, he
which
did.
I love, which
Yes,
was
read that too.
love the Swedish movie. He's Swedish. Swedish?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But I love the Swedish movie, but also if you're interested, it was made into an American movie with
Yeah.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the man from, they called it something else though. The man from,
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah.
what was that?
I
can't
didn't
remember.
watch it
That's
because
a
I have
movie,
a hard
not a book.
time. I have a hard time watching the movie versions
Oh,
of
that's a whole
books
other
that
topic.
I love. Yes, we could come back for another night talking about books that were made into movies.
We might not be invited back, Shannon.
Sorry, Tim. Yeah.
No, I'm happy to have another conversation. I'll tell you that already. I love all of this. So I think it's really interesting that we've already made this point that the moment in your life when you read a book and it resonates with you, it might, because I have had books that really resonated with me. And then later on, I'd read them again and I'm like, well, what about this? Or the opposite. I've had books I didn't love and later. So I think that's a really interesting thing. So I want to go back to Courtney. The Diary of Anne Frank, such a great choice, such a special book. Was it tied to a time that you read it, or is it just something about the book itself? Because it's a very important book.
It is a very important book. And it was middle school
Wow.
when I read it. And then in high school, it was required reading. And then I started writing, strangely enough. I started writing papers. Like I almost became not obsessed, but it was so foreign to me, everything happening in the world in which I didn't see myself a part of,
Wow.
and that people could be that way. And so I became almost like I had to write about it. I had to read it over and over again. Then I actually taught overseas for
Oh, that's right.
quite a few years. And so I went to the annex, I went to the attic, I went to concentration camps. Like it really, when I say it shaped me, it made such an impact on my life because it was something so foreign to me and I couldn't understand it. And I think sometimes when we read a book, we try to understand something that's not in our world.
Yes.
And that was what I was trying to do. And to this day, I still can't make sense of what I read in that book and what happened during that time.
That's amazing. I think it's amazing because Tim knows my kind of feelings about Anne Frank and how this winter I went to the annex and the secret room and all those things and how incredibly moved I was just by looking at the bookshelf, upon the entrance that they had hid the annex from the attic. And I just was so moved by it, and Anne Frank is someone, there's some controversy over the graphic novel, which the Anne Frank Foundation had given permission for the graphic novel, which has some things that the diary doesn't have. And I think, I just think we're hearing about it all over again, that Anne Frank is timeless. Like decade after decade after decade, we're still hearing about Anne Frank, a 12-year-old girl. It's amazing to me.
Well, and that's one of the reasons this is an important book, is it speaks to something that we all resonate with, the sort of the humanity and the cruelty and the things that you can't wrap your head around. And these are things that everybody needs to read and understand on some level, because we don't want to repeat those kinds of things. So I love that you mentioned that. And Mary, the fact that both of you have been there, it makes me want to go there too. And I'm going to try to make that happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because in your mind, you make this vision of what it looks like. But in reality, when you see where they were living and what they were going through day after day, month after month, it just...
Not that it has something to do with Anne Frank, if you don't mind, but something I do recommend is that people watch A Small Light. It was the Nat Geo series about Miep Gies, who was the one who hid the Frank family, Otto Frank and his family. And it is terrific. And when you see the annex in that, and then you see the annex for real, it's absolutely incredible. And it was done, it's on Disney, but it's through Nat Geo, and I recommend people watch that too. So.
Yes.
I love it. And the fact that it has resonated with you your whole life, that makes it a great book, really, for everyone, but especially for you. I think that that Shannon would have to agree with that.
I definitely agree with that. I would put it on my great list, although it's not in my notes today.
But look, there's so many books. I mean, listen, I had a hard time trying to decide what to put on my list too, because there are so many books. And if you're somebody that loves to read and somebody that loves books, then you love all kinds of books. I mean, we can talk about this for the next 4 days. We're not going to do that, everybody. By the way, if you're watching live, put in the comments, what's your favorite book, and tell us why. And we would love to mention that too.
All
so
right,
I guess
I'm waiting to hear your favorite book.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you guessed, it's a Charles Dickens book, because Mary knows how much I love Charles Dickens novels. By the way, when I read the biography of Van Gogh, it turns out that he was almost always reading Dickens, and that made me feel good that I don't know why. But so I had to choose my favorite Dickens, and that's hard because I have 2 that I especially love, but I chose Bleak House because that is my...
Wow. Really?
I love that book.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And I'll tell you why I think it surprised me. I had read a lot of Dickens before I got to Bleak House. In Bleak House, he does something he doesn't do in any other book, which is that he's telling the story, and then you turn to the next chapter, and suddenly there's a female narrator. It's like a completely different voice. And I still remember the first time I read that, I was like, wait, what happened? And I had to stop and figure it out. And Esther Summerson, who is the woman who's in the story, tells the story almost every other chapter is from her point of view. And I loved it. And here I am. I mean, I'm not a young woman, but it resonated with me, and I loved the way she told the story. So I love a lot of Dickens books, but that's the one I chose. Mary, does that surprise you?
Not at all. But my question is, did it have a good ending?
Or was it bleak?
Well, like every great Dickens novel, good things and bad things happen to everybody.
Right.
But it does have an ending that's very satisfying, and you're very happy for where the characters end up. But it's not happy for everyone, right? And some figures die tragically, as always happens in those kinds of novels. And there's a lot of things. But, I won't wax poetic about Dickens too long, but I think it's real. They're always very funny. I think the way he describes characters is unique and super, super funny for me. And the thing I love about Dickens too, last thing I'll say, is he helps the reader out so much, because you read a Dickens novel and there are so many characters that every time he introduces a character, he gives you a little thing about them that makes them memorable. Like there's a little woman that comes in and she always has this little purse, right? And so later, chapters later, in comes Miss So-and-so, with her purse. And he just has to say that. And I'm like, I know who that is, right? I remember her. And suddenly it all works for me because I have read novels where I lost track of who was who. And I'm going, sometimes they even put a list of characters and I'm like, well, what the hell is this? Who is this? And I hate that. I never feel that way in a Dickens novel. He always helps me remember who's who.
It's why I don't like the dragon sex books. You know what I'm talking about? These fantasy books like that everyone is reading. They call them romantasy or fantasies, and there's always dragons in them, and somebody's always having sex in them. I'm just being honest with you. I'm like, they have to show a map in the beginning. I'm like, what? And they're all made up words, and all the characters have made up character names, and I'm like, none of this makes sense to me.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about Lord of the Rings, and I'm able to keep up with that.
Really?
Yeah. No?
No, not for me.
No, not for me either.
I was. Not everybody. You're right. Not everybody. Okay, so that's I put my Dickens out there. Just in passing, I'll say my other Dickens I really love is Little Dorrit, which is very sad. It's a very sad story, and so I can't read it all the time, but I love it. And when I'm in the mood for it, the other thing is a Dickens novel is quite a commitment. It can take a long time to read because there's many, many pages, but I love it. So back to you, Mary.
Oh, they make you cry?
Of course.
Right. I like a book that makes me cry.
I just had one.
Courtney's crying back here.
Well, tell us what it was, Courtney.
The Lost Letter. I guess it was like a TikTok thing. I'm also part of a book club. And this was a book that we read for March. And I was like, I don't know about this. And then I read it and I cried from chapter 1 until the very end. And it was so like, I had to let it out, but it was so emotional. And sometimes a good cry is what you need with a book.
Tim and I always agree with this. Now, who wrote that? It's called the Lost Letter, the Long Letter.
Last. It's the last. I had to get my vowel right. The last, not the lost.
Last letter.
But I think it's really something when you can feel that and it's not be overly sentimental and corny. That is really hard. That's difficult for an author to do. And, somebody else might have found it sentimental and corny, but I love that you resonated with it and it was just the right book.
I like to have a good cry at a movie, a television show, a McDonald's commercial, whatever,
Publix is good.
Publix, Christmas commercials. I mean, anytime there's good for a cry, but especially a good book or a meaningful book, I think. And really A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith, which I did say was my favorite novel, is that book that makes me cry too. It's so beautifully written. It's sentimental. It's sweet. Okay, enough about that.
I remember that word. I remember that book being sweet.
Yeah.
In a way that I liked.
Well, and let me tell you something else she had. This girl couldn't rub two nickels together, but she had a teacher who believed in her. And I thought the power of public education is right there. And I always wanted to be a teacher who believed in people and believed in their writing so
I love it.
Well, as a teacher of high school students, and they would come in and say, oh, that made me cry when we were reading Patrick Smith,
A Land Remembered.
A Land Remembered, they would say, oh, that made me cry. And I said, that's good. Because if the author wrote so well to make you feel something that would inspire you, make you laugh, make you cry, that's a well-written book. So I've got another sad book for us.
Okay.
If we want to talk emotional books, and again, tied to a story. Another in my favorite list is The Midnight Library. Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Has anyone else read that?
You gave it to me.
You're not going to like what I have to say.
You didn't like it?
I couldn't get into it.
What? Okay.
Well, we don't all have to like the same books, That's one of the nice things about being a reader.
Right. But a couple other people, Chris Jones recommended it to me. Ginger
Because
Feathers.
I recommended it to him.
Okay. Well, there you go. Tell us about it.
Well, again, it could be the timing.
Yeah.
of it. Okay, so Midnight Library I first heard about because one of my favorite literary people, I have a bunch of them, but what is her name? I wrote it down. Kylene Beers.
Oh, I love
Kylene
Kylie Beers.
Beers, I had seen speak. Beers and Probst, they write a lot of things together. And I saw Kylene Beers speak one time
Mhm.
with the woman, her nickname was Professor Nana or the Book Lady. Terry, I think I'm going to mess up her last name, Lassine, I'm not sure. But I'm sorry I'm not doing her name justice. But I saw them both speak together. And I knew that they both had battled cancer at one time. And Terry lost her fight with cancer. But she had recommended this book to Kylene Beers as the last recommendation before she passed.
Oh my God.
And Kylene did not want to finish it because she recognized this would be the last recommendation she would get from her friend. But the book itself was about a character that enters the Midnight Library. I won't tell you how she gets there. And she encounters a librarian that she knew in her youth that had gotten her through a difficult time and introduces her to the library of all of these books, including the Book of Regret. But as she picks the books off the shelf, she's able to relive different times in her life. And at any time, if she feels disappointment with what she finds, she goes back to the library and can pick another book.
I'm going to
And
have
so
to read it again.
It was
Yeah,
just
me too.
all of this timing and things. And I know you guys did a different podcast about aging. And I will also say that this was about the time that a colleague of ours, a dear friend, Steve Layson, had passed away. So it was like put all these things together, and that book was impactful, and it made my great list.
I think about Steve all the time, by the way. So
I do too.
he was young, like 55. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So it's all of those things that I think, again, affect you in a way, emotionally that make a book on your great list.
And I think that I was afraid to get into it because I kind of knew what it was about. And I maybe was at a time in my life that I didn't want to have anything make me cry or things like that. Sometimes you put down a book because you're like, okay, that's too raw or that's too vulnerable right now.
Yeah.
Mary, that's why I waited years to read All the Light You Cannot See, All the Light You Cannot See. I knew I was going to have a hard time with it. Once I read it, I loved it and I was fine. But Mary, you kept trying to get me to read that and I kept going,
I was himself.
I don't know. So Mary, did you come in with another one besides the one you've mentioned already?
Could I talk about a childhood book? Okay. So I love an author who won very many Newbery Awards. And a Newbery Award is given to an author, a young adult author, children's literature author with the best book of the year. And I love, Catherine Patterson. What is she going to say?
I said, is it Make Way for Ducklings?
Oh my gosh, I love that book.
I know.
You gave me that book. So no, it's not because I wanted a novel, but the book by Catherine Patterson is called Jacob Have I Loved.
Oh,
And it's just about sibling rivalry, and it also makes me cry. But if you had a sister and whose sister was obviously better, prettier, could sing better, could do everything better than you can, you will totally understand this book. And, it's written from that, Louisa's her name, that character's point of view, but she doesn't seem to get anything right. And so I think, as growing up as an adolescent, there goes the clock. I always try to get on the mute, but Socks hasn't been up here yet, though. But anyone who goes through tough times as an adolescent can relate to this book. That I had 7 other brothers and sisters. Clearly, there was going to be there, and I love the book. It is also sweet. It's also a coming of age novel. I don't know if you've noticed a little trend in my book.
Yes.
I have. Yes.
I love a coming of age book, and I have tons of them and so many of them. And so Jacob Have I Loved by Catherine Patterson. And she wrote so many books like The Great Gilly Hopkins, another great young author book. I mean, Courtney and I taught elementary school, so we know kind of all these books, and I taught middle school. Shannon taught high school, so she may not know these, but anyway, that's my young adult novel. It's not necessarily my kid's book, but I do also love Make Way for Ducklings.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I like that we're talking about a book from our childhood. I have a book when I was in elementary school that I loved, loved, loved. So Courtney, do you have a book from when you were young that you would like to share?
I do. And again, it's a little strange because
She's a little strange.
I am. My last name is Beard, so we always go Weird Beard. You know, I fit my name. But it is a book, and I remember it from my childhood because of the beautiful illustrations. However, it was written in French. And so I had no idea what the words said. It was a gift to me from a family member who had traveled out of country, brought it back for me. But I could sit and just go through the pictures, and I made up a story in my mind of what those illustrations told. And so that's one. And then I just thought for fun, I reached out to my mom and I said, Mom, what was my favorite book when I was little? And she was like, The Wizard of Oz. And I said, well, that's not it. Like, I'm in a picture book. And she's like, you just have always, your whole life, have always loved The Wizard of Oz. And then she brought up Diary of Anne Frank. And but my memory was, and this is what has stuck with me when we try to put parameters around what kids can read. Sometimes we don't have to read what's on the page of a book
Oh my gosh, Courtney.
to deeply understand what's happening. And I feel like when I was little and I was going through and looking at those illustrations, I was making a story in my mind of what was happening. And so as an elementary educator, I never wanted to say, like, that's not a book you can't read that book because you don't know the words there. It was always like, if that's the book you want to read, you check that book out and you take that book home.
Preach, Courtney.
Preach
Preach.
it. What was the name of the French book? It wasn't Madeline, was it?
Oh, no. I have no idea. I have no idea what the book
Say,
Je ne sais quoi.
But really, you're talking about the power of art
Yes.
Yeah.
also, which is very impactful for all of us, but especially for young children. And I think that's why they love picture books, and that gets them into reading and the whole thing. So I love that story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Hey, Tim, I have a tie-in to something you said earlier. My childhood book, I thought we might be talking about this, is a book called A Home for Tandy. It's
What?
like out, you
Do
can't
you know
find
it?
it.
No, I don't know
You
it.
can't find it. It was published in the year I was born. And when I-
1900.
when I looked it up on like Amazon and stuff, the prices range in buying a copy from like $50 to $100.
Oh, wow.
But I think my mom has it at her house. But here's the connection to what you're talking about, though. It was a beautifully illustrated book about this elf that lived in the forest, and he didn't have a home, and all of the forest creatures came together to create a home for him in the winter. And I just remember the little bed that they had when the winter came, and it was all feathery and fluffy and looked so cozy and comfy.
Oh.
But the illustrator of that book, I wrote it down, I did a little research. It was Tim and Greg Hildebrandt, the brothers Hildebrandt. And
You're kidding.
you know,
Yeah.
right?
I know them.
Lord of the Rings. There was a Lord of the Rings series that they illustrated. And do you have it back
I
there?
have it. I have it.
Okay.
The Hildebrand brothers are like epically famous in that world. That's amazing.
Yes. And I also found out that they did the poster for the original Star Wars movie.
And the Wizard
What?
of Oz.
And the Wizard of Oz connected.
Oh.
How cool that we connected it all with A Home for Tandy. It was written by Audrey and Harvey Hirsch, by the way.
But we can't get it.
No, you can't
Well,
get
you
it
can
in
pay it for
print. You gotta pay big bucks for it.
But again, the power of the illustrations and the art, and to bring things to life and excite children's minds and all, I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have one. I wanted to share my favorite. I had a book when I was in elementary school that I checked out over and over and over and over and over. And it's so funny. It's like years later, I thought of it and I bought it back. I bought it again, of course. My book is James and the Giant Peach.
Oh, we all love that book.
Which and as a little, I don't know, as a little boy, the idea, the illustrations of the insects and their life size, and I just loved James and the Giant Peach and the idea of being able to travel and get away, like the whole thing, anyway, so that's mine.
Roald Dahl, who wrote that book, obviously also the great Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the Great Glass Elevator, a little off.
Oh, they're always off.
Oh, we love them.
Yeah, he was off, but
The kids love that.
They love it.
Yeah, I loved that book.
Another little book I thought I could bring up, Tim, for children is when I was little, no one is shocked by this, but I was an early reader.
You are gifted, Mary.
Oh, dictionaries.
Dr. Mary White was an early reader. I can't.
I know.
So, one of my favorite Christmas presents was a dictionary, which for my retirement, Courtney and Shannon found that dictionary to give to me and inscribed it with beautiful sayings. For Christmas, we would always get a book. Well, one year I got the dictionary, but the one year I got like a picture book, and my sister got the Boxcar Children, which I was like, how come she got that book? She can't read. I can read. And she was older than me. So we called up truce and I read the book out loud to her.
Oh,
Harry, I was in a classroom today.
Really?
And they were reading aloud the Boxcar Children.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was written so long ago. Gertrude Chandler is the author, in case anybody wants to look it up. And it's a whole series of books. And it's just absolutely delightful about a series of kind of orphans that live in a boxcar. And it's just, you could really relate to the coziness, like your little bed reminded of that. You could relate to the coziness and the sweetness of it and how comfortable they were. So that's all in there.
I love it. So I have a whole bunch of more books that I sort of put down that I felt like I wanted to mention, and I'm assuming y'all do too. So why don't we go around, Courtney? Name another book that you just came in with me that you wanted to mention.
So just recently, someone gave me a book because I love octopus, and it's called Remarkably Bright Creatures.
Oh, it's great.
Oh, did you read it? So, and she gave me the book because I have this beautiful picture in my dining room, and Shannon walks in and goes, oh, and she's like, but she is indulging me in my love of the octopus. So she got this book, and it is a book that I didn't think that I needed, but I did. And so going into spring break, it was my first spring break book. And it was about this older woman who is working in an aquarium in Washington State. And there's an octopus in the, it's captured in there. And it's just the relationship that they create. And actually, the octopus helped her solve a mystery of her missing son.
Wow.
And it was so beautiful.
Don't tell me any more. I haven't read it yet.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But I did cry at the end, but they were happy tears. It really is a remarkably great book, and I highly recommend it.
I love it.
When did you read it?
A while ago. It's been around a little bit, but
Yeah.
Ginger recommended it to me, so I read it too. She really liked it. She's a big audiobook person. And audiobook is the same thing as reading in my mind. Do you notice, Tim, that I'm not calling it books on tape anymore?
You've grown so much, Mary. It's so impressive. Shannon, let's hear another one of yours.
Okay, I mentioned earlier that I heard this author speak, and the author is Abraham Borghese. The book was called Cutting for Stone.
Oh, it's a great book.
And you talk about your Dickens novels being long. This one is like over 600 pages. I mean, it was pretty hefty, and it really is an epic tale. And I just loved so when I heard the author speak, he talked about how he always wanted to be an author, but his father told him he needed to have a fallback plan. And so he became a doctor. And so he really is a doctor. And then the author is like the second career for him. But when he spoke, he talked about his career. I think he was born in Ethiopia, or he ended up living in Ethiopia with his family. And so this epic story kind of is similar in nature to certain things in his life, but it tells the tale of identical twins that are born to a nun and a surgeon that are on like this cargo ship that are going over to work at a hospital, I think. But it has a lot of medical jargon in it, but it was fascinating. You learned a lot from it, but it also was just a tale about love and different kinds of love and familial love and romantic love between the couple and whatnot. But when he told the story about his own time as a doctor and a surgeon, he told the tale about how he was a doctor in Tennessee in the early days of the AIDS epidemic, before anyone really knew what that was. And he was treating different patients, and he recognized like the value of being a person and being able to show love from a doctor to a patient, and really like that bedside manner that we tend not to have so much in medicine these days. And so I could have listened to him speak. He was so eloquent. I could have listened to him all day. But then when I read those words again, like I could just hear his voice come through the page. And I love that book. I put it on my great list.
Good to great.
I love it.
I love it.
I know I didn't coin that term. There is a title, and I read that
Jim
book
Collins.
too. Yeah,
Jim Collins coined that. Well, yeah, I don't think he might have coined it, but yeah.
So I have a book I wrote down on my list, and I'm going to just go on record and say I'm shocked that it hasn't come up yet.
Oh, all right.
Okay, and because I thought everybody would have it on the list, which is To Kill a Mockingbird. And I think that's a great special book. And I just wanted to make sure and just say that I think that's a really special book. I just reread it like last year. I was just sort of moved to spend time with it again. And it just, I mean, really,
You know, when I read it again, Tim, a few years ago, I read it out loud to my niece who had to read it for school. And it was during her spring break, and she was here, and I read it to her. And it was a different experience reading out loud, and still just as great. And what an incredible, incredible book. And I think Harper Lee wrote that when she was very young, really young.
It's a hard book to read out loud. I taught that book many years, and I do love it also. But trying to read some of that with a dialect, it was tough. Yeah.
Well, I messed up some of the dialect, I'm sure.
Well, I think it's a really special book. And I also want to mention that 2 years ago, maybe 3, there was a Broadway production of To Kill a Mockingbird that was unbelievable. It's
you saw it?
Yes, I saw the touring company with the guy that played John Boy. Good night, John Boy on the Waltons.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas.
Richard Thomas. Yeah.
Richard.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. But I got to tell you, it was one of the most impactful evenings of theater I've ever had in my whole life. And I've seen a lot of theater. But the way they staged it, the few changes they made, it was just chilling. So if you ever have a chance to see the recently staged version of To Kill a Mockingbird, please do that. But I think that's a really special book. It's one of those books that's now on banned lists, and that just really, really gets my craw, because I think that if everybody in the world would read this book, we would all be much better off. Yes. So if you haven't read it, do. So I just wanted to mention that. I thought that would come up right away. And there's no rules about that. I'm interested. I'm fascinated that there aren't a lot of like famous books that have been discussed yet. And I think that's perfectly fine. Books are personal.
Yeah, and I think too, I enjoy books that are accessible. I mean, there's some books just not accessible to me. Like I
You mean
just,
like Ulysses or something?
yes, it's just,
Yeah.
or it's just not accessible. Like I don't feel, Tim, I'm a very fast reader. It's a problem for me. It's one of the reasons why I don't like those dragon romantasy books, is because I'm not
Because
really,
the sex is over too fast? Oh, no. Just kidding.
I do call it dragon sex, but
I didn't even know this was a genre.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
oh yeah. It's all
It's
over
huge.
TikTok. It's huge over
Well,
TikTok.
that's why I don't.
People-
I think Game of Thrones. And
But there's a place for fantasy and escaping and romance novels.
Yeah, and I don't want to offend anybody. It's just not my thing because I think because I'm not a typical reader. I'm a very fast reader. I think that I skip over details sometimes. I don't read every single word. Like
But see, I do. See, I'm a very deliberate reader because
Yes.
that's why I like Dickens, because I want to get in, like people will complain like that, or like who wrote Pride and Prejudice?
Austen.
Right. People will complain about that because I had a friend that said, well, she spent 3 pages describing a tea cozy. And I'm like, yes, that's why I like it. Like, I want the description, but I can see, Mary, how that would be frustrating to you, perhaps.
Yeah, and I just think that I had to read so much for like so much school that I just got it. It's a terrible habit. I'm not saying it's a good habit, but I just got into a quick habit. Like, I'm not saying I'm a skimmer or a scanner, but I'm saying like, if you have something like Basquiat War College where dragons go train, the name Basquiat means nothing. It just means nothing. And I might call it Bass, or I
Okay.
get hate mail from this, Tim.
No, you're not. Nobody's watching anyway. And if you are watching and you have a favorite book, put it in. So, Mary, do you have anything else written down you wanted to mention? We're getting toward the end of our conversation. So, any other book on your list you want to make sure to mention?
As you may be surprised to find out, I have a coming of age coming of age novel. And this one is again for children, not children, but and someone needs to make a movie of this. And Tim, you did read this book after I told you had to read it, and maybe forced you under duress to read it. But it's called The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Avi, and it takes place in 1832. It's a coming of age. A girl ends up on a ship, kind of a cargo ship by herself without her family. She's going to Providence, Rhode Island. There's a murder on board. The captain, you seemingly think he's so great and proper. She's a proper girl, ends up being terrible. She befriends a Black man, and the book ends wonderful. I love a happy ending, Tim. And she ends up leaving her home in Providence, Rhode Island, to go back to the ship to be with Zechariah, who was enslaved on the ship. And it's so beautiful. I love a happy ending. It's one of the reasons why I'm not good at reading or watching television shows where people have no redeeming qualities. Like, I need people to be good. And that's just the facts. So True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Avi, A-V-I. I'm recommending it. Tim read it too.
I did, and I liked it.
Yep.
Okay, Courtney, you have anything else you came in with?
So we mentioned it, I think, before we went live on air, The Outsiders. That is just a fave. Again, a book that resonates with you, not because it was something that I had gone through. It was something that I hadn't gone through. So I seem to gravitate toward experiences that I have not experienced. And
No
that,
rumbles? You've never had a rumble?
And that book, I do believe it was almost 2 weeks. I would still go to bed at night and it would bring tears to my eyes. It hit me. And I have to say, the movie, I am not a big movie person.
Yeah.
Because the book is always so much better than the movie, but they did a beautiful job with the movie, The Outsiders, as well. And then I had to live it all over again with the movie, The Outsiders. But that is another book on my great list.
Love it. I read it out loud many years to kids.
Yes.
I think
love
most people did.
I don't know how I could do that. I don't know if I could get through it.
I love that too. And I did love the movie.
Nothing gold can stay.
That was a great movie. Were you going to ask me
No.
one more, Tim? Oh, I don't have any more on my list, but if I could I take 1 minute because we have a gift for Mary while we're
Yes.
here, because we met one of Mary's favorite authors recently at a literacy
What?
conference. We met Lester Laminack.
Oh, I love
And
Lester Laminack.
Lester Laminack, we said he was signing books. This was his new book, A Cat Like That. And we got this autographed for Mary. And we thought this was an appropriate time to share this gift with her.
Aw.
It said to, let's see, what did he write? He said, Mary, what a cat. Lester.
Lester.
I'm
2025.
Facebook friends with Lester.
Yeah. So
Oh
we
my
thought you
gosh.
would love a cat
This
like
is
that. And we should have your kids.
I know, where's socks?
Socks should be making
Socks
an
was
appearance.
just under the table.
Socks comes to everyone.
Fox always makes an appearance. That's right.
Yeah. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you guys. I love it. I love Lester.
We love Lester too.
And we love you.
Thank you.
That's so wonderful.
It
Thank
is.
you for doing that. I love that.
Love it.
So I have a couple more I'd like to mention.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so I don't know if any of you are familiar with the book, The Song of Achilles. Are you familiar with this at all? It's,
Sounds
name is
familiar.
familiar.
Sounds familiar.
it's set during the Greek heroic age,
I-
and it's sort of a retelling of the Trojan War.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's by an author named Madeline Miller. But I loved this book, and it's the only time in my life that I have ever finished a book. For whatever reason, got in the shower. I think it was like the end of the night and I was getting ready to go to bed. But anyway, I finished a book and I got in the shower and I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And I don't do that. I don't mind crying and I don't mind being moved by things. But I mean, I was so moved that I just sat there sobbing under the water of the shower for a good while. And I just want to recommend it because I loved it.
Oh,
It was also very personal to me. There are gay characters in the story, and that resonated with me. And the fact that the story, the placement of the story in history is so sort of epic and giant, and made
right.
it very personal. And I just appreciated that. So I loved The Song of Achilles. I also wrote down the Harry Potter books,
Ah,
which I just love. And I try to read one every now and then just because it makes me happy, and it's a world I like to escape into. Anybody else?
I love them too.
Can I ask a question, Tim? Because this is going to drive me nuts all night. Which Dickens book had Pip?
That's David Cop. No, it's Great Expectations.
Great Expectations.
Great Expectations.
You like
You don't have good memories?
And here's why. Again, a story within a story. I was a brand new teacher, and Mary, I know many of these young adult author books she talks about because I had a great course when I was in college on young adult literature, and I got to meet Robert Cormier.
Chocolate War.
Many of his books are not allowed to be read in school, and I
Great ones.
tried to read one, The Chocolate War, my
Yeah.
first year of teaching, and I was told absolutely not, it would not be allowed, and I needed to do what was in the textbook, which was Great Expectations. And I was like, wah, wah. I loved The Chocolate War. I thought that the students would have related a little bit better.
Yeah.
But again, that's because I was biased and I wanted to be able to do young adult literature that I thought was relevant. I'm sure if I did a better job of presenting Great Expectations to them, they would have loved it wholeheartedly.
Right.
But that
Well,
was
let me say this. I do think that you have to figure out how to read Dickens. Like sometimes I'll start a new novel, a new novelist's writing, and I have to figure out how to read it. And I feel like that's very true for Dickens. And I think it's very off-putting to people. And I have had friends tell me that they were forced to read something, in junior high or high school from Dickens, and they hated it, blah, 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 And
Right.
so I feel bad about that. I will tell you that my personal experience with Great Expectations, that's when I fell in love with Dickens, is I was maybe 9th grade, and it was something we were supposed to read. And I just resonated with me, like the epicness of the story, and Miss Havisham going up in flames and the whole thing. I was just so excited about it. So I do think that one of the points we've made tonight is that the context and the time in our lives and who we were and what we were feeling or what we were going through, this is very important to how we resonate with a book and books that are special to us. And I love that that's been part of our conversation, because I didn't really expect that.
Yeah, I could have named some other things that I thought were classic, but I wanted to name books that I really felt something with, which to me did from good to great. We're all going to be using Shannon Blount's term now, aren't we?
Well, and I feel like greatness is personal, and it's our own definition. And like we said, a book, I had a friend in college that gave me The Princess Bride, and I loved it. And it was really kind of a life-changing story for me, but like she kept a whole bunch of them. And whenever she met somebody she liked, she gave them a copy of The Princess Bride. You have to read this. And of course I did.
I have 3 copies of Jacob Have I Loved in my bookshelf right now.
Perfect. And I have done that before too, where I had special books and I would just keep them and make sure that if I liked somebody, I wanted them to have it. So I think that's cool too.
Did anybody add a book into the chat this evening?
Actually, yes.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Hi, Katie. Thanks for watching. A current coming of age book you might enjoy, Raft of Stars by Andrew Graff. Do you guys know that book?
No.
No.
Can you spell the last name, Tim?
Graff. Raft of Stars by Andrew Graff. Mary, you'd probably love it. It's a coming of age book, but it's just says it's current. So thank you, Katie, for bringing that to the conversation. And anybody else, if you're watching and you want to name a book, share a book that you love. I have lots of others on my list too, but we can sit here and talk about books all night. But I've loved this conversation, and thank you guys for being so honest. What's so great, Mary, is that you guys are also such good friends, and you know each other and trust each other so well that you could easily disagree, and it's perfectly okay. And I think that's awesome. I kind of think that's missing in our world right now, is that we should be able to disagree about some things at least, and then still go out to have dinner and have a lovely time. So I think it's okay, like that you guys were willing to say, "Oh, I hated that." Like that. I didn't like that book, but it's your favorite. Great. Now let's have a cocktail. I think that's really good.
I love it too. And I think I really appreciate you, Tim, like letting us veer off the marching and Pad Future Arts and talk about another passion of ours. I mean, we're passionate about that. Courtney doesn't have any, or Courtney as Shannon doesn't really have any involvement. Wait a second. Shannon was in the marching band in her high school.
Marching band.
Well, Mary, one of my new concepts for this whole Call Me Bee series is just to talk about things I want to talk about, that I'm interested in or that we're interested in. And I think this is one of them. And listen, what was it you said earlier in the conversation? I think it was Shannon that said something about, is it books that are made into movies? Was that what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Maybe we should do this again and do that. Like books that are talk about whether they're, I do think most of the time the book is always better.
To Kill a Mockingbird movie, pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a great movie.
Yeah. Great movie.
Lessons in Chemistry.
Oh,
Great.
I love that.
Great book. I was going to mention that. Great.
Movies that we like better than the book. Wicked.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
bring that book, but
I struggled. Oh, did I struggle with Wicked? So political.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my husband loves it. So to each his own. I had a really hard time with Wicked. Yeah. So maybe we'll do this again sometime if you guys are amenable, and we'll do that part of it, because I think that's really interesting. I've loved this conversation. So let's go around and everybody say something in closing, sort of any final thought that you'd like to leave anybody with, something you came away with tonight, one more book you want to throw out there. Courtney, I'll let you go first, just randomly. What would you like to say to wrap this all up?
So I just appreciate the opportunity. This is my first time ever on a podcast. I have never done a podcast, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I've never listened to a podcast. So now you have opened my world to podcasts. And so I am going to dip my toes into the podcast world. And so I thank you for the invite and allowing us to share our passion.
And if you're ever, I love that. Thank you. And if you're ever lonely and want to hear me or Mary's voice, there are podcasts where we're talking about stuff. So you can
Yeah.
like you're just really
For
missing
sure.
us. So Shannon, how about you? Anything you want to end with? Final thoughts.
I just think like books, like podcasts, they take us outside to a new world and something beyond what we know. We're able to experience different people, different places. And I do think that they help us to feel empathy to other
Yes.
people. And that is so important in our world.
Now.
And I think like we got to read more, and that will help us as a society, as a world.
Yeah, I love that point, because people who only live a very tiny life with only people they know that are just like them and they never go anywhere, whatever, that's very dangerous. And books, reading is one of the ways of going somewhere, experiencing someone else, seeing something from someone else's point of view. Well said. I like that point. Thank you. Mary.
Thank you.
I just want to say it's really special to talk about something really I'm very passionate about. You're very passionate about it, with passionate people. We love talking about books. You and I talk about books all the time, Tim, but we've never done it on a podcast. So this is kind of a special thing for us on a marching and pageantry arts podcast, marching arts education. And so I think that's really exciting. And I do thank Courtney and Shannon for my book. Very special.
I love it. And I could talk about books all day. I love books. And listen, if you are watching this by chance, you're probably a reader if you've tuned into this. But if not, I couldn't make it through my week if I don't stop and turn off the world and escape into a book. And I'm so excited when I find a book, and I just can't wait I know I'm in a really great book for me, but I can't wait till my reading time shows up and I can get back to it. So it's been really fun to talk about it. So Mary and Courtney and Shannon, you guys were just wonderful. Thank you for being a part of this conversation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.